Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open a really ancient legal text, Deuteronomy 19. And what's amazing is that it contains this surprisingly modern blueprint for a just society. We're going to look at how it tackles issues we're still facing today, things like due process, economic fairness, and the very nature of truth itself. So, right off the bat, we're hit with this huge question, one that societies have wrestled with for thousands of years. And this ancient law code, well, it doesn't give a simple answer. Instead, it tries to build a system that actually balances both. You see, at its heart, this chapter is all about this powerful struggle between two competing ideas. On one hand, the demand for strict, impartial justice, and on the other, the call for compassionate mercy. And let me tell you, that's a tension every single legal system in history has had to figure out. What this text does is create these really specific, practical protections for three groups that were especially vulnerable: people who were accused of a crime they didn't mean to commit, the poor, and anyone who might become a victim of false testimony. Let's dig into how it did that. Okay, so the first principle we're going to look at is this absolutely ingenious system of cities of refuge. This was a pretty radical idea, really, designed to hit the pause button on cycles of violence and bring some real fairness into the justice system. To really get this, you have to understand the world it came from. This was a world without police or public prosecutors. Justice was, a lot of the time, a private, family affair. And that could lead to personal revenge and these endless bloody feuds. The Avenger of Blood, well, they weren't seen as a criminal. They were just seen as someone doing their solemn duty. So to counter all that chaos, the law set up this clear, practical process. And get this, look at step 3. The law actually required that the roads to these cities be kept in good shape and clearly marked. It wasn't enough to just have a law. The system had to actually work for people. This whole thing basically transformed a chaotic personal vendetta into an orderly public matter of justice. Now, this is absolutely crucial. This law was one of the very first to formally make a distinction between, say, manslaughter and premeditated murder. The key thing wasn't just the action, okay, a person is dead. It was the intent. Was there prior hatred? Was it planned? This focus on motive, not just the outcome, is a cornerstone of modern law. It's amazing. All right, next up, we've got a rule that seems kind of minor at first. It's just about property lines. But when you look closer, it reveals this really deep concern for economic justice and for protecting the poor. This might just sound like a simple property squabble, right? But it was so much more than that. In that kind of agricultural society, these little boundary stones, they were literally the line between a family surviving and complete destitution. Moving one wasn't just theft, it was a direct attack on their ability to live. And this really shows you why it was taken so seriously. Land wasn't just real estate. People saw it as a sacred inheritance. So this law was specifically there to protect poor families from more powerful neighbors who might, secretly shift the stones inch by inch to swallow up their land. It was basically a legal firewall against exploitation. Okay, let's move on to how this blueprint for justice protected innocent people from another huge threat: just plain old lies and false accusations in the courtroom. That number, 2. It represents a massive leap forward in procedural justice. I mean, it's a concept that has echoed through legal systems for thousands of years, and for a very, very good reason. The logic here is so simple, but so profound. One person, they can be mistaken. One person can be biased. One person can just lie to get what they want. But getting 2 or 3 people to coordinate on the exact same lie, that's a whole lot harder. This 2-witness rule was this powerful safeguard against wrongful convictions that might be based on just one person's unreliable story. And now, for probably one of the most famous and most misunderstood phrases in all of legal history. Today, when we hear this, we think of brutal, unending revenge. But here's the twist. The original intent of this law, which is known as lex talionis, was the exact opposite. It wasn't a command to get revenge. It was a radical new rule designed to limit it. The whole idea of an eye for an eye was to establish that the punishment has to fit the crime. It can't go beyond it. Before this, if someone poked out your eye, your family might retaliate by killing them, which would then spark a massive clan war. This law was meant to put a stop to all that. It ended these insane cycles of disproportionate, brutal retaliation by making justice proportional. So, what was the ultimate point of all these laws? And what happened to these powerful ideas over time? How did they evolve? It's really fascinating to see how later texts, like the New Testament, built on this foundation. They didn't just throw these principles out, they deepened them. The focus kind of shifts from external legal rules like needing two witnesses to an internal moral character where you just strive to be truthful in everything you say. And that principle of limiting revenge, it evolves into this much higher ethic of forgiveness. At the end of the day, this ancient blueprint shows us something really important. A just society isn't measured by its power or its wealth. It's measured by how it systematically protects its most vulnerable people. These three pillars, due process, economic fairness, and a real commitment to truth, are just as relevant today as they were 3,000 years ago. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If these were the foundational pillars they intentionally built their entire community on, it really makes you ask, what are the pillars we're building our society on today? And are they strong enough to protect everyone?